Hi, ladies. How are you? It's Elise Berryhill here, Coach Elise. I'm one of Leslie's coaches, and today I am solo. And so, to the best of my knowledge, Diana won't be joining me. I would love it if she was able to in a little bit, but I don't think that she's going to be able to. And so, it's just going to be you and I. And so, in this solo state, I probably could talk for an hour, but I would prefer not to. And so, I would love for us to almost just kind of have a feeling of like we're on a group text together and we're talking and sharing. And so, if you would just let me know that you're here and that there are other people on the other side of the text, so to speak, or the other side of the Facebook Live, that would be super, super helpful for me. So, just would kind of love to hear if you'll say, "Hey, I'm here," and where you're from. And then also, great, Sherry, thank you so much. Then I know I'm live, and I appreciate your braveness. And so, Sherry, I would love to have a long conversation with you. But if you are also here live, please let me know that you're here and we can have an intimate conversation. And oh, Wisconsin, cool. Wow. I don't know how cold it is up there, down, we're kind of in the, I'm in Atlanta, Georgia. And so, hey, it's all rolling in. So the weather's a little bit warm today, and we're expected some storms, and so it is clouding up, and I'm a little concerned about that. But hi, Yvonne, uh, Oregon, Maryland. Hello, everyone. Good. We're gonna have a big group text, and so this is going to be a lot of fun. And we have a great topic today: how to live well when your spouse is not changing. And kind of the difficult. Oh, it's 37, slowly warming up. That sounds pretty cold to me. We don't get a lot of 30-degree weather here in Atlanta. We get a little bit, but not a lot. That sounds pretty chilly. But I love this topic. I think that there's a solution, and we want to talk about that today. And so, in order to just kind of be in conversation, I'm going to be looking over at the chat, then, addressing all of you. And what we're really ultimately leading up to, and my hope is that my assistant today I think it's Kelly, will put this on a banner at some point. We're really enjoying these Facebook times and really inviting you to Walking in Core Strength, which we're going to be starting the second week of March. And it's a beautiful, beautiful class. It's just so great. So these are going to be helpful tools. Walking in core strength is kind of what we're talking about today. And when you have core strength, it is much easier to be able to be aware of yourself, to be available to others who are giving you wise feedback, taking responsibility for yourself, not always looking for the responsibility of others, really, and being able to be empathetic and compassionate. And so one of the first steps of core is the C step, is being committed to truth and reality. And I know with my own clients, I'm really often saying, I'm not sure what would it really look like if you were committed to the truth of this situation, to the reality of this situation. How might you do things differently? And that's really kind of the call even today, when our spouse is not changing. And maybe it's not our spouse, maybe a mother-in-law, maybe a mother, maybe a sibling, maybe an employer, maybe an employee is not changing. How to, a employer-employee relationship may be different because there's a power differential there. But when we have someone in our life who simply wants to be who they want to be, how do we learn to manage ourselves with that? And that's what I would love to step in today. Wow, we have so many from all over. Tiffany from Quebec, New Hampshire, Michigan. And yeah, hey, Kelly, good to know that you're on. That's great. And let me just tell you, one of the things that Conquer Walking in Core Strength is all about is really, being courageous, really stepping into really how God has gifted us into our own strengths and talents. So ladies, I want you to know that I've kind of ridden on the coattails of some of my other coaches for quite a while now, probably better than a year, of letting them be the host and me not figuring out the text and me just kind of like clicking a link and here I am. And so just this past week on a coaching call with the other coaches, something, got said. And I said, what, I'm plenty capable of figuring this out. And so guess what? Come Thursday, 2 days later, after I made that declaration, I actually had to require to to step into it all by myself. And so this is a brave moment for me, not only to do this solo, but also do the technical piece to get on here. So I want you to know that it looks easy for many of us, and probably getting on Facebook now isn't quite as difficult as it was at one point. But tech isn't really my strong suit. And so I have to do it somewhat repeatedly, write some directions down. And once I've done it, several times, it gets a little easier. And so we know that as coaches, we're not perfect. We have weaknesses. We have strengths. And some of the girls on our coaching team are very strong technically. And certainly we still have a technical staff behind us that really is their strength. And so please know sometimes that even though it's not your strength, that probably you're very capable of doing it. We are limited human beings. We're not capable of doing all things. And we have to know and live in that truth as well. But am I capable of following a few button instructions? I am. And so this is a big moment for me. I'm kind of a little bit proud of myself that I was able to do it. But I am going to be calling you all into, really truthfully, much harder situations than just a little technical press a couple buttons and showing up live. Let me also remind you that this is a live Facebook, and so if you need to do something to remain anonymous, that you don't want your name out there or just a first name, please do that, because we don't know who sees these recordings, and so please protect yourself. This is not a within our Conquer structure, so we want to make sure. And then also, Callie's posted out there as I get going, and we're going to talk about a few things, and then probably 15 or 20 minutes in, I'm going to ask you all to post some questions. Kelly, I do not have the Google Doc, and so I will be reading the questions, off of the feed. And so when that comes, Kelly, if some questions come up, if you'll, when I get to the question section, if you'll put them back in the feed. So let's get to the content today, and that's how to live well when your spouse or another person in your life is capitalized, not changing. What do we do? And so one of the scriptures that I love, 1 Corinthians 28:20, be strong and courageous and do the work. And so, ladies, we're going to be calling you into doing your own work. And that's going to be one of the solutions to when your spouse isn't changing. You're like, wait a minute. No, my spouse needs to do the work, not me. And so, but you're going to have your own special work to do. And the rest of the scripture says, don't be afraid or discouraged. And I don't know about you, but when there's been a problem that I can't seem to solve, and I don't really have a lot of power to solve it, it's really easy to become afraid and discouraged. And the Lord is saying, I am with you. So don't be afraid. Don't be discouraged. I am walking alongside you. And that doesn't mean we're going to have the perfect outcome or the outcome that we would want. But God is with us. He is Emmanuel, God with us. And he says, don't be discouraged, for the Lord God, my God is with you. He will not fail you or forsake you. And so can we step into this? How am I going to live well? And one of the thank you, you are capable. I appreciate that, Sabrina. I found out I was. Let me see if I can edit it, at the right time. And so, but anyway, good morning. I'm here for the golden nuggets. Well, let's start with one of those golden nuggets. Thank you, Mary. Here's one of those things. So we're saying, how do we live well? And I think that question, or just those two words, live well, is going to be unique to you. And I would like to start off the conversation this morning by, what does living well mean to you? I know that living well for me would be some level of joy, some level of contentment, maybe reduced anxiety, some level of calm, some level of ability to thrive. And so would you put in the chat, just for you, think about, I want you all to really engage for yourself. And if someone else puts a word in the chat and you like that, take it, embrace it. Like, yeah, joy. I would love, living well for me would be joy. Maybe living well would be less conflict. That may not be possible. How might I live with that? But let's identify, going through, what living well might mean. Living in peace. Thank you, Lores. Living in peace and with purpose outside of getting through it, right? Let's hear some more comments. What might those be? What would living well be to you? Living well would be peace. Yeah. And there's a place where, Danita, I might say, what does peace mean? What does peace really look like for you? Open communication. Yeah, that would be a lot better, wouldn't it? If we could dialogue back and forth. Harmony, which is still a big word. So we have peace with one another. We're in agreement with one another, or we have some agreement with one another. Joyce, if you'd like to, expound on the word harmony, showing God's love and grace to one another, knowing I'm okay even if others around me are not okay. Yeah, can I be okay even when you're not okay? Living my God-given purpose. Yeah. Transparency. Can we be authentic? Can I be my real self and you be your real self? Transparency is a really big word. And so oftentimes when our spouse is not changing, being heard, honesty, not having fear in all, excuse me, I gotta look at my glasses, just look through my glasses, not having fear as an almost constant companion. Yeah, I can't imagine that anyone can live well if we're living in chronic and constant fear. Yeah, it's not possible. So the removal of that, or certainly the dial down of that, no more needing to consider how he will react. Woo! That's really big, Sherry. Can I be myself even if you're gonna show up as your worst self? That takes a lot of courage. But Sherry, I would invite you to, yeah. Is it just a bark? There's really not a bite, right? What if I'm really just after a while, it's like, hey, if you want to yell, doesn't feel great. Matter of fact, feels kind of awful, but I can't stop you from yelling. But it's not going to stop me from showing up well. I'm not going to show up aggressively. I'm not going to be so quiet and passive that you don't know there's a me. But how do I best represent myself? How can I show up well? And part of that is we're going to really learn in core strength, and walking in core strength is knowing really who we are so that I don't misrepresent myself, that I am committed to truth and reality, that I am open to feedback and wise others in my life, that I do take full responsibility for myself, that our step, without being disrespectful really to myself, and I can be respectful to others. Being heard. Yes, going back to what is living well. And I think we have to identify that. We have to know what it is. It's not just a big thought out there in the, out there in the universe. I just want to live well. I want to live well. Let's identify it. What are we shooting for? Like, if I'm going to step into one of these nuggets, what is it I'm even shooting for? What does living well really mean? Because oftentimes when I'm working clients, they'll say, well, I just want a better marriage. And like, sure, we all do, right? But what does better really mean? What will you know? How will you know you're living well? How will you know you're in a better marriage, right? Not being scrutinized and monitored, right? And that may be a place where, so Kelly, I'm glad you brought that up. Living with affirmation, being heard, internal healing, reduced fear and anxiety. And so the first nugget, thank you for saying that, is really being able to identify what his problem is, but then really identifying what is my problem with that problem. Like, let's say he looks at porn. Let's say he's a bad financial manager. He really, he doesn't ever have money in his pocket. If money comes in, money goes right back out. Let's say he's particularly messy, right? And so let's say he's really very loud and vocal and very abusive and even destructive in his thinking. Let's say, he demonstrates very narcissistic behavior, very self-absorbed, very selfish, nothing matters, except for him, right? And so that can be certainly very problematic in any relationship. But we have to stop and say, and this is step number one, what's my problem with that problem? Do I want to be in relationship with that person. And that's really kind of, making some tough decisions, maybe step number 2. But identifying what my problem is, with his problem. And it may be some things that we have to forbear versus actually confront. And so we may need to step in, confront that, and see if someone's, like, hey, when never clean up after yourself, when you actually speak to me in that tone, it's so tough. I can't really hear what you're saying. I just get afraid, in that moment. And so is it possible, that you can lower your voice when you're, that angry with me? And they go, yeah, sure. But for 30 seconds they do it, but they really never change. And so you have to identify, what, I can't be in relationship with, or I can't, the constant yelling is his problem. He's the one that's doing it. You're not doing it. But I have a problem with that. That makes me afraid. So I can't live well if I'm constantly afraid, right? It's just too loud for my nervous system. I can't get calmed down at that volume. So now I'm starting to identify my problem. So how might I work on my own problem? And maybe it's something as simple, and I'm going to say simple because there are, varying degrees apart. But, the truth is someone never picks up their clothes, someone never takes care of themselves well, someone always leaves the dishes all around. It can be pretty problematic. Now, I don't think it's a 10, it's not a destructive marriage, but it is problematic. And so we want to identify, so what's my problem? And I've even heard Leslie use this similar example. I personally, I don't live with a, ultra clean spouse. I mean, I think he can, but he does pick up after himself, which is really pretty nice. I'm pretty grateful for that. It's probably maybe me more than him, but, and so I have to identify what my level of cleanliness is versus their level of cleanliness. And so there may be a level of forbearance in there. Can we forbear? Right? And so forbear means I actually step into it without confrontation, or understanding that confrontation is really going to not make a change. But can I learn to live with it, accept it, even though I don't like it? Right? And then there's some things, and I have a couple words around things that are really egregious, that if it's immoral, it violates God's word, immoral, unethical, illegal, certainly we're going to have to figure out, should we even live with that? And that's really kind of step number 2, right? I may have to make some tough decisions. Let me go back here. I think you've started identifying some problems, and let me just kind of talk into that. My problem with this problem is it makes me feel uncomfortable and afraid and fear, right? So Rachel, yes, right? And so how am I going to manage? Is it possible for me to live well if when I speak up, I said, you make me feel very uncomfortable, afraid, and fear because of this behavior or this way of thinking or this belief system? And then I think we need to listen to that feedback. They may say, oh, I'm really sorry, I don't want to do that. But his behavior really never changes. And so we listen to the behavior, not the words. And most often the behaviors speak much more loudly than the words, right? As whether we can trust it or not. So often we hear it, we get so excited, oh yeah, well, they're going to change. And they never do, and we get very disappointed. Ladies, I would love to invite you into really, watching the behavior, listening to the words, certainly, but watching the behavior. Who is it that the person on the other side of you really wants to be? They give you, platitudes or the yeah treatment, but they never really want to change. You aren't stuck. And the invitation really is to focus on yourself and really become powerful. Like, hey, I don't, you don't have to take away, I'm not going to give away my thriving. I'm not going to give away my peace. All these words that we describe living well, I don't have to give away those things. I actually can get them for myself. I'm inviting you to walk alongside and saying, hey, these behaviors don't make for a great relationship, but my objective is not to change you. My objective is to invite you towards change. But my objective really is to say, I need to take care of me. And at some point in life, at some point in our relationship, you said that you wanted to do that you loved me, and that you cared for me. We made those exchanges with one another. But this is not care. This is not love. This is not compassion. This is not tenderness. This is not intimacy. This is not trust. This is not mutual care. The things that make for, healthy relationships. The reciprocity of care with one another, the mutuality of care and trust, right? The honor of one another. We aren't there. What's happening? And do you care? And so sometimes it's like, do I matter? And again, I've heard Leslie use this expression. It's pretty good. I'm just going to kind of answer or use her example of like, it just something simple. If we were sitting somewhere and, he had his foot on your foot. Maybe he didn't realize it. You said, ouch, you're stepping on my foot. Basically say, and he said, oh, so what? And he's put his foot back down on your foot. I think you'd be really surprised, but you would begin to say, hey, my pain must not matter. Then what do I need to do? I'm going to need to, maybe turn my chair around so that he can't do that. Maybe I need to speak up. Maybe I need to move away. Maybe I need to step even further away. And that may mean separation or divorce, right? So the first thing is really identify your problem. Hey, I'm in a relationship with someone who really, my thoughts, my beliefs, my values don't matter. Whoa, that's kind of problematic, isn't it? What will I do with that? Speak up? Absolutely. But then evaluate. Hey, as soon as I speak up, you say, okay, but it comes right back at me. So he's not changing. So now I have to say, hey, what's my problem with that problem? Now I have my power back. I've got to use my resource in order to change my environment. I'm not going to change his environment. What I do may change, his environment, but now it's up to me. Own your problem. Now let's talk about making tough decisions, right? Okay. So we were still talking just a little bit about some of the things that living well, healthy communication. Yes, T. It makes me feel lonely and unloved when he doesn't engage. Right. So we're starting to identify what that problem is. Yeah, Kelly, thanks for that. When to forbear and when to confront. My husband said he would go to counseling, but going is the most hurtful thing I have done to him. I would be curious in that moment. What I there's not enough information for me to really speak into that. But certainly, he said he would go. And he has agency to go or not go. He has agency to stay in the counseling room or not stay in the counseling room, right? And so if it was hurtful to him, I don't know that you were about that. My hope is that the conversation didn't feel comfortable. Maybe the counselor wasn't kind as she should have been. I don't know. But he has full agency and you have full agency. And so this is when we say, no, this is not good for me. What else we can do? Or, what's the next step? He said asking him is the most hurtful thing. Oh, just asking him. Thank you for clarifying that, Rachel. Yeah. So there's a sensitive ego, a sensitive spirit. So, so the question, Rachel, you can explore that. Or maybe I just hear a little, blame shifting, like, oh, now you've hurt me. What? So now I'm just going to go to the victim now. So let me see if you rescue me from the hurt, right? So what is it about attending counseling that would be hurtful? We can always be curious in that moment, but certainly I think that was his way of saying, I don't want to go. And to blame it on you and to get you back on your heels. What might you do with that? Right? And so, ladies, this isn't a place that we have to think fast. And sometimes we feel like we do. Sometimes we just need to pause. That's kind of interesting. What is it about me suggesting that feels hurtful? And you can be open and compassionate, or you may just be saying, hey, come on. Counseling, not everybody's thing, but to suggest it, say more. It feels like the change is pretense so that he doesn't have to really change and still gets to have his family intact. Yes, Laura's. So that may be true. And so maybe that's what you're observing is that he's giving you the yeah treatment. But when it comes to real behavior, right? We don't absolutely know what, someone's motive is, but we can know them well by their behavior. And so you have a voice and a say in this. And so if it's pretense, if it's not real, if you know, there's no compassion, there's no understanding, there's no intimacy, there's no real relationship, there's more than one person that has a say over whether the family is intact or not. And so that's part of the tough decision. That's part of step 2. Ladies, kind of write that down, even just in the chat, just a little bit. Step 1, own my own problem. Identify what is my problem. And I want you to be taking care of yourself, right? Identify that. How will I take care of myself? Not be trying to change him. I've spoke up. I've done all I can do. I have to identify what my problem is with that problem. Clearly, he doesn't have a problem with yelling at me. Clearly, he doesn't have a problem with keeping secrets. Clearly, he doesn't have a problem with, giving me the silent treatment. Clearly, he doesn't have a problem with not working. Clearly, he doesn't have a problem with porn. Now I've got to identify my problem, step 1. The second nugget is, do I need to make some tough decisions? What can I live with? What can I live with? I can't live with always being broke, always having to be in fear that my card's going to get declined at the grocery store, not knowing whether the children really will have diapers or food. I can't live that way. And I've spoken up. I've done all I can to say that doesn't work for me. And you've pretty much said it doesn't matter because you keep spending, you keep gambling, you keep using it on, drugs or alcohol or cards or whatever your hobby is. And so if by your behavior you're saying I don't matter, then I'm going to listen to that. And I'm going to not necessarily take matters in my own hands, but take control of me and solve my problem. I can't live that way. And then the third thing is for us to decide. We will never forbear evil, right? The Lord calls us to speak truth in love, but we aren't to collude with or forbear evil. And so what will that mean for us? And so question, let me answer this question. So my hope is that you got those 3 down. Own your own problem, make a tough decision, and decide you won't forbear evil, right? There's a lot we may need to forbear, but we're going to confront evil. And then what will we do? But it kind of goes back up to step 1. Okay, I'm going to forbear that evil. I've recognized the problem. Now I know what to do. Question, when I have spoken up, I didn't intend to hurt you or do that. And that's it. He focuses on his intent and not the outcome. This sounds like he's saying, at least I didn't do it intentionally, and so I'm not that bad. Okay, so I don't love this question, and certainly we've all had that. We've all misstepped at times. I think what Rhonda would be the repeated pattern, like, wow, you don't intend to hurt me day in and day out. Isn't that kind of interesting? That you have no awareness that you're hurting me, right? And that day after day that you can say, you didn't mean to hurt it. But here's the truth, and my hope is that you can say this. Thanks, Mary Louise, for identifying those things. Yeah, would love for you all to do that as well. What I'd love to do is to say, about intent, is that intent does not absolve harm. And he's absolving himself. Like, if I just say I didn't intend it, I'm free. I get off scot-free. And so the law doesn't see it that way. And our hearts don't see it that way either. And so if, I would use the situation, if a drunk driver, hit us and killed one of our children, And the driver got out and he was pleading and begging, I never meant to do that. I never meant to harm. Would you say, sure, okay, you're absolved? No, you would never do that. It's likely you would punish to the full extent of the law. His intention didn't absolve the harm. He still harmed. And we've lost a child. Right? And so whether it's a simple whatever or, repeated offenses, intent never absolves the harm. Now, certainly we've all said that, and we may mean that. And it feels a little better when someone didn't intend, like, wow, you sought out to hurt me? No, 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 no. Here's what I was thinking when I stepped into that. And there's an explanation. Will you forgive me? Because I see that even though I didn't intend, it still caused harm. Here's how I would like to make it up to you. Right? So remember, intent never absolves harm. Okay. So Kelly, let's put it back out there a little bit. And ladies, I would love to begin to start answering questions. And pretty close, maybe 5 till 10 till. I'm going to need to step off. I have another session that starts at 1 o'clock. And so I would love to hear some questions. How to live well? How will you live well when your spouse is not changing? And you're kind of looking at a situation right now like, I don't know how I'm going to do that. Let's spend a few minutes talking about that. And thank you all so much for your engagement. My H is resentful of words I've spoken in anger, and as a response to his gaslighting, he decided he will go see a counselor, but there is so much awkwardness and silence between us. How to stay well while I wait and see if there's real change. Feeling so uncomfortable around him. Okay. So do you want to say that your problem is waiting? Do you want to say that your problem is being super uncomfortable around him? So I'm just going to go with that you get super uncomfortable around him. So how might you manage yourself to the degree that you can? Maybe the tough decision is you're in counseling. I'm so glad that you are in counseling and that you are taking initiative. But until there's really a shift, I still feel super uncomfortable around you. And so for now, I'm going to need to be in a different bedroom. Or for now, I would like for you to consider getting an apartment while we work on this. We maybe went a little too far before we started seeing a counselor and working on this. And there's just a little too much awkwardness for me to be comfortable. And I need to do my own healing. And so, is what level of separation, what will you do or what will you not do in order to manage while you wait? Right? And so, and what will waiting mean for you? How long will you wait? What does that look like? And so thanks, Elise, for validating. I agree with you. Need reassurance. Yeah. How to approach someone in an assertive way after ghosting you several times. Okay. So let's think of passive. Well, let's even think of the word assertive on a scale. All right, on a spectrum. Okay. And at the very bottom of this scale, of this spectrum, is passive. The very top of it is assertive. But I want passive and assertive to be the smallest pieces that really, unless, there's bodily harm or there's absolutely repeated no's, do I have to get assertive? Passive means really and truly, the way I kind of look at it sometimes is that you're going to win. I'm not really going to speak up or show up. Assertive means I'm going to do the best I can to win. You're going down, and I'm going to speak up about as loud, and maybe not just with the volume of my voice, but by doing what I need to do. There's a lot of things we can do to be very loud and very assertive, right? But it says really kind of the motive behind it is I need to win. And what I think that we forget sometimes is that all this space in between, and I want to make that really big for you all, that assertive has a lot of room. That sometimes I'm assertive. I mean, yes, assertive is not aggressive. Did I say assertive out here? I think I did. I meant aggressive. Passive, aggressive, and assertive's in the middle. That sometimes, I'm just one step above passive with my assertiveness. Sometimes I'm really tight. I'm getting more, there's a little more volume or a little more, certainly something to my message, right? There's a little more strength to my message, but I'm not really aggressive just yet. So really kind of think of yourself in this range. How assertive do I need to be? Do I actually need to get aggressive? Can I stay within my own, core values and my own belief system and my own big circle, as Leslie talks about, right? Of who I want to be without flipping to aggressive. Aggressive would be really if somebody was trying to snatch my child or do bodily harm or do something illegal or immoral to me, right? How aggressive do I need to get? Wide range of assertive, right? And so, applying your assertiveness. And I think that if you often walk in passive, just to step into assertive can feel aggressive. But I want you to ask yourself, is it aggressive? Why am I feeling uncomfortable to speak up? Maybe that's part of my problem, is that I don't feel worthy enough to be heard. And maybe my worth gets so squelched when I'm not heard. And that maybe isn't some truth. That I'm still valuable, whether you want to hear me or not. It doesn't change my worth. It may not feel good, but it doesn't change my worth. And so what have I stepped into the validation, really the worth that God has given me, and acted in that integrity? Okay. So another question. Kelly, thank you so much. When dating and person reading messages sometimes feels very warm, polite, and others cold, indifferent. Is this a red flag? So I'm assuming that you're dating one person and sometimes he feels very warm and polite and other times cold and indifferent. Is this a red flag? I think it's worth paying attention to. And certainly, is it possible that he has simply just gotten busy at the moment? Like, in my own relationship, I don't really contact my husband too often during the day. He's not rude to me if I do call, but it is a very, very busy time for him. And so, and the same thing with him. I mean, he may leave me a text, but unless it was an emergency, he wouldn't call me. And so, has someone been cold and indifferent in those moments? That it's really actually very explainable. And so, is it part of the personality? Like you see this hot and cold person. And if that's true, right? Sometimes when we're dating, we only have very small data points. And so one of the things that I see as such a discouragement is when women have gotten married and they saw that in the dating relationship and they didn't, and it's really shown up in marriage and the longevity of the marriage. Ladies, sometimes, the truth is that we can be fooled, that someone can put on all kind of charm. You never see a quiet side to them until you get married. Sometimes it shows up in dating, and that's really actually a good thing on some level. It's like, hey, what's up? You seem very indifferent and kind of cold. Is there something that I did? Is something going on? Do you want to talk about it? And let's see how they respond to it, right? But indifference is really actually pretty cruel. I think that it's kind of more cruel than I don't like you. Like, we don't know, like, what's going on with you? And they're very coy and indifferent. But it can be a red flag. Let's speak into it. I would say definitely don't ignore it. Absolutely don't ignore it, right? But speak into it and see if there's a response. If there's no response, it keeps going. Now you're collecting data points. Like, hey, you're kind of moody, right? Or you may say to yourself, this person's really pretty moody and I feel pretty crummy when they get indifferent. Is this the relationship I want to be in? I certainly like when they're not moody and when they're warm and engaging. But can I accept that I may be getting in a relationship with someone who's both? Is that what I want to do? Certainly to ignore it would be foolish. But remember, sometimes we don't have a lot of data points. It only showed up once, right? Is it an outlier? We don't know. We can all be kind of cold or quiet at times. Look at the frequency. Question. He makes faint attempts. Let me scroll it back down. He makes faint attempts at healing, but it doesn't look like his heart is changing. How do I encourage him while keeping myself safe? I think encouragement is a very sweet thing, but that's not really our job, right? So we can walk alongside someone. We can certainly give positive affirmations, but it's not really my work to do. It is his work to change. We can just say, hey, that feels good, right? That feels good when that's happening. Or, hey, when we were able to talk through that, felt so different than how we've done things in the past. I'm encouraged by our conversation tonight. But it's not my job to fix someone. It's their job, right? And so, certainly we can walk alongside. But I would love for you to think about allowing someone the freedom and the room to make their own changes, their own autonomy. Their work is their work to do. Your work is to manage yourself while someone manages themselves and is willing to do that. Don't be discouraged, that I said, but I just want to, it's not my work now to always catch them in this good place where they're not children, right? But we can be an encouragement. All right, let's go to that next question. Thanks, Melissa, for that question. I just want to free you up. Question, how to overcome the wounds of rejection and invalidation. Before getting married, I was self-confident. I felt secure in flow, and it's hard to feel that way now. Even though I'm in counseling, excuse me, ladies, in a small group and taking classes, right? So, my apologies. I drink a lot of water. How to overcome the wounds of rejection and invalidation. People can harm us and they can hurt us, right? And I think what I like is that you realize that, this constant invalidation, this constant rejection, this constant pushback has wounded you. And so one of the first steps I would say is you need to create some distance, because that person has said, I'm willing to do this to you. And so we have to take ownership and step back. My guess is that you've spoken up and said, ouch, that really hurts. And yet it's continued. So much so that you're losing yourself in the process. And that can happen, ladies. I mean, it just can. And so I don't think we don't have unlimited strength and unlimited self-worth, right? You're telling me you're a really strong woman before you got in this relationship. And over time, it's worn you down. And you're aware of that. Now, what do you need to do? My spouse is not changing. I must change. What's the tough decisions you need to make in this moment for yourself? Learning to step into this acceptance. This is who my spouse wants to be. And it's a great discouragement and a great grief. This is not what you signed up for. No doubt. But you're willing to accept that this is who he wants to be. So what will that mean for you? What's your problem with his problem? I think you're able to identify both. His problem is that he's dismissive, indifferent, invalidating. And your problem is that it's worn you down. Now, what will you do with that? How will you take care of yourself? When will you say, I won't do this. I may do this, but I won't do this. How will you protect yourself? How will you guard your heart? Let's answer some more questions. I hope you will step into that soon. Do we do anything different when kids are still at home and involved? I hope so. And so, but that's strictly up to you. And I think that you're going to hear that from all the coaches. But I want you to say, why am I making this choice? I want you to stay, fixed on you of where your strength and power comes from. And sometimes I think that if you have been in some support groups, and even in our own support group of Conquer, there's a lot of wisdom in there of women, and we don't know what your case may be, but we've had a lot of women that said, now on the other side, and I actually ended up exposing my children to that for, 18 years, 20 years of their life. I wish I would have left when they were young. And at least the exposure would have been limited. At least every other weekend would have been the level of exposure. There's no way to take it down to zero, or very few cases, unless, a spouse, totally abandons you and the children, right? You're not going to take it down to zero, or someone has, no desire to be around them. So there's going to be some exposure. And so you have to decide what level of exposure. This is the dad they're going to live with. One of the things that I often say too around this is that if you're going to choose to stay, please take ownership of equipping them to live in a destructive relationship. It's not going to change, right? And so maybe they will be equipped to see it when they begin to date, when they begin to, be with in other relationships, not just in a dating relationship, in an employment relationship or, a club relationship, that they would not tolerate a destructive relationship. And we can do that by equipping them and helping them understand and know, what destructive behaviors look like and why you chose to stay. Have you seen that sometimes it's too far gone, that trust is so destroyed, there's no way back? Laura's, I would say that what your limitations are and what my limitations are may be different. But there's certainly limitations, right? That if someone's not trustworthy, they're not trustworthy. That trust has been broken. But I have clients who live with people who are not trustworthy. They've chosen to do that. But we have to walk in truth and reality. We can't deny. And I think what becomes problematic is untrustworthy people say, always want to be trusted. No, I'm telling you the truth this time. Right? And I think that that's an incredibly challenging relationship to live in. Like there's no way I can know that this time, but not this time, but this time, but not this time. Right? And so I think a wise person says, honestly, I can't trust you unless somehow you can prove it at any time. That's who you said you wanted to be. You've repeatedly fudged, the truth, or you've lied, or you out and out lied, and right. And so I have to walk in truth. And this is part of our walking in core strength, truth and reality. And Kelly, do you have the ability? I'm so sorry that I haven't learned this step about walking in core strength, because we still have classes available. I mean, openings available. They are really tight. I looked at the numbers this morning, and I don't know if how many more classes will be. Availability, classes will be able to open up. We opened up 2 yesterday. Leanne has one at 10 o'clock at night. She lives out in Arizona, so it's not really her 10 o'clock. It's my 10 o'clock. So I would never be able to do that, but I think it's her 7 o'clock. And so she's opening one really kind of for the West Coast girls a little bit, but she said she actually has people from all around the world that have been in her 10 o'clock classes. So she opened up a 10 o'clock class. So I know that one's come available. I have a 9:30 in the morning that just opened up. And so I have that one's going to be available. There's 1 or 2. And some of the other ones, otherwise they have closed out and are full. We are only taking 15 in a class. And so when we hit that 14, 15 number, we are closing it out. And ladies, I also want to say, be sure that you want to be in this class, because if for any reason you remove yourself from the class, we don't fill it back up. Once we kind of close the registration, we close the registration. We don't have a waiting list. Like after 2 weeks, we let somebody in. No, they've missed it. They can't do that. And so, to be honest with you, I'm not sure even what our refund policy is, but I don't think we have a refund policy. So know that you want to be in this class. We're going to be talking about how to get strong in these situations, how to manage yourself, how to be strong, your core strength. Just like we would go to the gym, and our inner strength and our physical body has to be strong for us to have our shoulders back and standing up upright. We see, not really young people, our muscles are strong, so we kind of hold ourselves up. But any level of weakness and we start to bend over, we start to lose that, right? And so we say that relationally as well, that we're fragile. And so we start bending over, we don't have good strength. We start to shrink, right? I mean, that can happen emotionally as much as it can happen physically. And so walking in core strength is about you, ladies, about you getting stronger, about you being able to stand up, stand tall, pay attention to yourself, taking full ownership of yourself. And we have a couple spaces. We really want you in this class so that you can grow stronger. And all of you that are on this feed are saying, hey, my spouse isn't changing. The next step, we are really inviting you with these Facebooks to know what this can look like. And you're going to be in an intimate group of 15 other, 14 other ladies and you. And one of the coaches is going to be coaching that class. And we'll be able to talk with you and talk through, these small things. And our time will be limited with you coaching, right? We're not going to be able to spend our whole session, with you, but we're going to be spending these coaching times. And how will you manage yourself in taking responsibility? How will you manage yourself? What will boundaries now look like in your life? How do you see yourself utilizing your boundaries? Lots of great conversations. And we really want this time to be about application. We're going to have a small teaching, time, but very limited. And really, it's going to be about application of you taking the content, because Leslie's going to teach those contents on videos. We're going to invite you into doing your homework and then talking about that homework and really applying it. What will it mean in your life? We have 15 girls with 15 different situations. Some of them will have some crossover. Managing it will have some crossover, but we're gonna be very, very serious about application. If you want to know how to apply it, make sure you're in a walking and core strength class. Let's see. Okay? New comments. Let me scroll down a little bit. Kelly. Oh, great, Kelly. So you can't do a banner. If you can, Kelly, I'd love for you to run a banner, but putting in there, so it's leslievernick.com /group coaching will take you to the registration. If there's any classes you really wanted and can't get in, sign up, email assistant, see if there's been any cancellations. And sometimes that does happen before we start the classes. We may have someone cancel out. So Christy Shepard, I'm just going to read your comment. Sounds like he's gaslighting you, shifting the blame to you. Learn more about it and how to combat it. Leslie has lots of resources on this. Yes, she does. Thank you so much. Right. And so really, this is part of how we get stronger as well, is that we know some of these terms and we know what's happening and we can call it out, and they may deny it. They can do that, but you're not fooled, right? You were there when they said what they said. If they deny it, you can't, what can you say? No, you were there. You still can't make them say, oh yeah, I heard it. But you don't have to be gaslit, right? He's doing the gaslighting and say, you know what? I need to act on what I heard. What will I do with that? I'm going to make it my own problem. I'm trying to make it your problem. You said you would do such and such. Now I'm actually hearing you're going to deny it and you're not going to do it. Okay, now I have a problem with that. What am I going to do about it? How will I learn to manage myself? Do I want to live with it? How will I live with it? Okay. Are there discounts if you've taken it before? There's not. And would the material be the same from the past class? It is. We all, the application would probably be a little bit different in the fact that there's going to be different women in the class. And so, or you may want to take a different coach to get a little different application. I often encourage that. I love to see my women from past classes because now I'm getting to know them better. I love to see them in new classes, but I also encourage, like, hey, we all teach just a little bit differently. We all coach just a little bit differently. And so that might be a great time to step in with another coach this time around. All of us would love for you to do that. Okay, Kelly has, and this may be one of my last questions because I do have a client at one. I'm dating someone, but the way we communicate is not very effective. Sometimes we're in the middle of a conversation and he leaves without notice. 2 weeks later, he shows up again. How can I speak up without sounding demanding? Well, I'm not sure what you would be demanding, but I would really take note to what's going on already in the dating relationship. It's not likely to change in the marriage. And so how are you going to manage that you are in relationship with someone that, either gets flooded, doesn't want to deal with it for whatever reason, they flee, right? And that belongs to them to be able to do it. But I think what you need to recognize is you do indeed, as you said at the beginning, it's not a very effective communication style. Now, I think you could speak up calmly and say, hey, this doesn't really work for me. When it gets really tough and kind of ugly and really kind of hard, you run away, and that belongs to you, and you can do that, but it's ineffective. And so 2 weeks later, you show back up as though nothing happened, and something has happened, and then we don't end up talking about it, and so now we're just kind of stockpiling problems. And I'm not willing to do that. Are you willing to stay in the conversation? And if you're not, then question asker, what will you do about that? Because he's showing you who he is. And Maya Angelou has a quote that I love: when people show you who they are, believe them. And it's so true. And so, ladies, please don't only just listen to words, but listen to behavior and believe it, that this is the person they want to be. And you're the person you want to be. You may be invited to change, and that may sound attractive, and you may do that. You may agree to that. That belongs to you. But if someone does not want to change, please look at how you will manage that problem that's being created by no change. Because you're not powerless in this situation. It may be really challenging, super challenging. You may not be able to even thrive with the challenge. It belongs to you. You take ownership of you. How will you manage your problem with his problem? Ladies, it's been really, really precious. Thank you so much for your interaction. It's been so helpful. It lets me know that you're engaging, that you're curious, that you probably want more. And so we offer these, and we want to invite you to be a part of us, and know that you walk a difficult path. And we feel for that. And we want to know if peace is possible, can you be a part of that peace process of living well, right? If you want to choose to live well, and many of you identified what that means, can you do it by speaking up? Can you do it by saying, hey, that doesn't work for me? Can you do it by stepping away? Can you do it by possibly even leaving a relationship? What will it take? And that belongs to you. Thank you again for this time. I really enjoyed it. I hope that you did. I hope you'll be a part of Walking in Core Strength. Take care, my friends.